Olá, pessoal. Bem-vindos a mais um episódio do nosso podcast semanal chamado Vídeos Dão Dinheiro, onde vamos decifrar se criar vídeos realmente dá dinheiro, mostrar se é um trabalho digno, eliminar os preconceitos e mostrar o potencial que esta área realmente tem. Hoje o podcast vai ser muito diferente dos outros podcasts que nós já fizemos. Temos um convidado muito especial, um convidado diretamente da África do Sul, um, um realizador de publicidades com muitos anos de experiência. Vamos hoje beber um bocadinho dos outros países africanos, especialmente a África do Sul, que é um país que é muito bem sucedido no mundo audiovisual e no mundo do cinema. Até esqueci de tirar minha máscara, vou tirar, vou tirar a minha máscara. No mundo do cinema, a África do Sul produz uma das melhores publicidades do mundo. O meu convidado de hoje é vencedor de vários prémios internacionais, vencedor de mais de três Cannes Lions. Para pessoas que não sabem, o Cannes Lions praticamente é os Oscars das publicidades, né? É os Oscars das publicidades, onde só os melhores são nomeados para este prémio. E hoje temos um convidado que foi nomeado para esse prémio muito prestigiado. Ah, é uma, e ele também é um mentor meu, né? É um mentor meu, alguém que está a me ajudar muito na minha carreira publicitária. Um, mentor, coach, professor, psicólogo, às vezes, quase um pai na indústria de publicidade, né? Alguém que tem sido muito generoso com o seu conhecimento. E o nome dele é Dean Blumberg, right? Your full name is Dean Blumberg, right? Dean.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, okay.
Blumberg, yeah.
O nome dele é Dean Blumberg. Agora vamos ver duas publicidades dele que eu gosto mesmo muito. Eu gosto muito dessas duas publicidades. E são as duas publicidades que eu considero ser uma das melhores publicidades que eu já vi na minha vida. E essas duas publicidades é que me incentivaram para entrar no mundo de publicidades. E só para dar um bocadinho de contexto, porque essas publicidades são sul-africanas, uma das publicidades, né, fala dos ataques de xenofobia que teve na África do Sul, acho que era em 2008 ou 2010, já teve vários anos que teve ataques de xenofobia, que praticamente os sul-africanos estavam a matar os estrangeiros, né? Estavam a matar os estrangeiros. E a publicidade fala um bocadinho disso, só para dar um bocadinho de contexto, para as pessoas entenderem a mensagem final da publicidade, né? E a outra publicidade não vou falar muito, vão ver, e provavelmente quando ver, vão entender porque é que eu gosto muito dessa publicidade. Então vamos ver agora essas duas publicidades.
You know what's wrong with South Africa? All you foreigners. You must all go back to where you came from. You Cameroonians, Congolese, Pakistanis, Somalis, Ghanaians, and Kenyans. And of course, you Nigerians. And you, Europeans. Let's not forget all you Indians and Chinese. Even you Afrikaners. Back to Swaziland for you Swatis, Lesotho for you Sotos, Tswanas, Vendas, Zulus, everybody.
Real South Africans love diversity. That's why we have introduced two more items, new peri-crusted wings and delicious chinchado and chips.
This time of year, no one should have to eat alone. So get a Nando's six-pack meal for 6.
Ok. Agora, por o Dean ser sul-africano, né? Vou trocar para inglês. Para pessoas que estão a ouvir e não falam inglês, peço que vão assistir este episódio no Telas. O vídeo podcast está legendado em português. E também foi muito trabalho, então peço que vão mesmo assistir, porque trabalhamos muito para vocês poderem ver e entender e beber do que o Dean vai falar. Então vou trocar para inglês. Okay, Dean. So finally, I'm switching to English. I sort of
Okay,
laid
no
it off
problem.
now. We just watched two of your, incredible ads, commercials.
Mhm.
That I actually have an interesting story I'm gonna tell you soon, about those two ads.
Okay.
But usually what we do on the show, we like to cut straight to the point, right? Because the name of the show is Vídeos dão dinheiro, which means the videos make money. So the first question I want to ask you, right, is
Mhm.
can you make a living only directing commercials in SA and in other parts of the world that you've worked in? Like a brief answer. You don't have to go into too much detail.
Yeah, let's break it down. You can make a living directing commercials alone. Where in the world you do that, that will be a question. But yes, 100%, you can make a living doing anything, I've come to learn. The question is really about if you are able to make yourself more than just a director of within a one region, it'll obviously be more beneficial to you because it is a market of a lot of people that want to do the same work. And the more you can stretch yourself out of your borders, whether it be the borders of Angola, whether they're the borders of Africa, whether they, the borders of your genre as a whole of where you work and how you work, that is obviously more beneficial. But the truth is, 100%, it is an industry that actually is very rewarding financially. If we were to talk about it on just a basic earning sensibility.
Okay. No, great. Yeah, because I always like to ask this question because obviously the program is to sort of remove the preconceptions that people have. But yeah, South Africans will probably find it a weird question because so many people are making a living from it, right? But now let's talk about those two amazing commercials that we saw, right?
All right.
And it's actually quite interesting. It was a story I was going to tell. It's quite interesting the way I discovered your work, right? Because when I was in film school, I had a project where I had to like interview a production company, I think a producer at a production company and stuff. And I was and obviously commercials, I think like I've spoken to you before and other people, commercials is very distant. A lot of people are not aware. We watch them, but like we're not aware of the behind the scenes as much as we do know like of movies and all the other areas, right? So the production companies I was looking for like the bombs and the quizzical pictures and all those like fictional production companies. I knew commercials, but like I wasn't aware of the industry. But then I started researching sort of other production companies, and I saw Bouffant, right? I saw Bouffant, and then I started checking out their work, and I was like, wow, no, I've seen this ad here, I've seen this ad here, I've seen this ad on TV, and I love this ad, and then I literally fell in love with like your reel, right? I fell in love with your reel. I was watching like every commercial you did. And I was like, and then literally, like, I think from watching your ads, that's when I decided I want to start doing commercials. Because I saw like how much you can actually stretch the genre, right? Where it's not just, a selling point, but as we saw in this ads that we just saw now, it's like, it can be funny, it can be interesting, it can be how do you say it? Educational. Can you say educational? Yeah, it can teach you new things. And yeah, and I just fell in love with the genre. And I actually interviewed I don't know if I told you this, but I interviewed Melina from Bouffant.
I didn't know that I didn't know.
I interviewed Melina from Bouffant and asked her like quite a few questions just to understand why you guys were so successful at the time, because you guys were like killing the market at that time. I had the interview, and then I met Mark Sidelsky, I remember. And yeah, and I was looking for you, but then they said you weren't around because I think you were hectically busy. at
Okay.
that time of the year. So yeah, so that's how sort of I got introduced to like your
Okay,
work
I didn't
and
know that.
commercials.
Right.
But I want you to tell us a little bit more about this ad, right? The Nando's diversity ad. Like
Diversity. So that came second.
Yeah.
Just to put them in timelines. Dictator was the
First. Oh, okay.
the first Nando's commercial I ever made.
Oh, okay.
Um,
Did it come out like Dictator came out first?
uh, Dictator came out first in about 2010.
Okay.
So that was the first Nando's commercial that I'd done.
Oh, cool.
And I mean, I've done subsequently many, but that was the first one in a particular headway, that also headspace. The production company, so obviously never, as people should know, is that a production company or the directors aren't creating these ideas. And you are right that we are very much kept in the dark as to how advertising gets created. Even having left film school, I had no idea how an advert got made. So even when I got out, I had no intention of going into commercials. My intentions would go into long form, but it's a long story, but I found my way making commercials. It took me a long time to get my first one. But the truth is, I had been working already steadily for about 3 years at the time. And I had done a few commercials for the same advertising agency, which was the Black River Football Club, run by a brilliant creative named Ahmed Tilly. Great guy to interview if you ever get a chance. And Ahmed had taken Nando's down a road of political humor. So the advertising agency is coming up with your concepts, which are built out of strategies that is discussed way before we enter a project with a client, an agency. You're only coming on to the tail end of their thinking. So they had gone down the road of creating political advertising in social media, on Twitter, on billboards. There was some concepts of working politically in the TV space, but it hadn't gone that far yet. And what happened was they had decided to take a big leap with the Dictator concept. Two young creatives decided to do it, and they pitched it to me or briefed it to me, and we pitched it against a couple of directors, which you're always going to be doing, pitching against a couple of other directors. And then we created Dictator. And that was, for the most part, a big change career-wise for me. And that's often what's going to happen to a director. There's multiple phases in your career, and for all of us, we hope for a turning point, a moment that catapults you from what is the group, outside of the group, into an individual, a space where everybody notices you. It usually accompanies awards, accompanies discussions, interviews, all those sorts of things. But the start of it is usually a commercial that is well conceived by an agency and then executed well by a director. All those things have to come together. So Dictator was one of those particular commercials, and we made it. And I don't even think we understood what would happen. I mean, it was probably to this day the most viral, handed around commercials that Africa's ever had.
It was very controversial, right? Because I think
sure. I mean,
you got death threats. I think maybe Mugabe called you.
Yeah, the youth, the Zimbabwe, what was it? Mugabe's youth division burned down a Nando's in Zim.
Really?
Yeah, we got death threats. There was some rioting at some of the Nando's. It was hectic.
People are angry.
People are angry, but you know, the first sign of a dictatorship is no sense of humor. And I'm particularly, so I was interested to do something like that because, so I'm not particularly interested necessarily in doing humor. I'm interested in doing smart things. So it's not just funny. It's poking fun and bringing to light quite an insane thought, which is that you have these maniacal, at the time, mostly African dictators that had done these horrible things. And here was the last one, sitting alone at Christmas without any of his friends. And it was something that we jumped to do, but I didn't expect it to have such a worldwide sort of response. And it just did. And you can't predict these things.
Yeah. No, but
And
the
here's
level
the
of
fun-
detail, though, sorry to cut you off, the level of
Yeah.
detail, though, that I think maybe that was probably your job, where you see the pictures of the different dictators and like,
Yeah, I mean,
and
I
it's something you
guess,
can rewatch it and learn new things all the time.
so your
Yeah.
job as a director in commercials is to execute. Your goal is to execute flawlessly. So if you get briefed on this concept, it's funny already. We've got these crazy dictators. It's a flashback to wonderful times when the dictators got to just enjoy their insanity. So that's funny. We're there already. You're not going to make something funny if the script isn't funny. So it's funny. But then the question is, and this is the choice you have as a director, of how are you going to represent them? So there was even this idea originally that were they going to be a bunch of famous comedians dressed up as dictators? And in my mind, the only way to do satire is to do it seriously. You can't laugh at yourself laughing at something, in my opinion. So it was important to create real life dictators. So we worked very hard, yet to your point, to make sure those people seemed as authentic as possible. The cast, we produced that commercial in 10 days. My pitch actually included all of those cast members. We did makeup on people. We did various facial changes, wigs. I had an amazing wardrobe stylist, Pierre Vennings, who got me authentic outfits. All those things fell into place to make the execution, and the more believable the execution, the funnier it becomes. If you turn your mind to the idea that it was going to be a bunch of goofy comedians with bad wigs, think about how it would be different. But it was an idea. It was someone's idea to do that. As a director, you had to go, no, that's not going to do it. That's not going to do this idea justice. We need to do an authentic portrayal of these dictators and then lampoon them.
That was your suggestion, right? To the
That was
agency.
my suggestion. That was my pitch.
Okay.
So, because you could come in and say, I'm going to do the whole thing with stick figures if you want. Maybe not a good idea, but that is your right as a director. How are you going to execute their idea to get the maximum out of it? That's your job. It is not your idea. It is not your ad. It belongs to a client. The more people understand that, the better we'll all be. Because I'm not interested in personally watching someone's short film. I like advertising that's really advertising. The goal was to sell chicken. And the goal was to get noticed and then sell chicken. So how do you get noticed? And we found the best way to do that was to create authentically real characters. And then when you've got Mugabe or you've got Saddam Hussein, so it wasn't exclusively African, you got Saddam Hussein doing sort of sand angels, it's hysterical. But if it was just some rando comedian in a bad wig, well, we can expect him to be silly. I want to see Robert Mugabe on his back making sand angels. I want to see him riding a tank with Idi Amin. And again, people are sensitive about a lot of these things. How can you make fun?
Angry.
Yeah, people get angry, but people also laughed. How can you make fun of people that committed a genocide? That's the question. That's the hard question. How can you do that? Well, in my opinion, you can make fun of anything. That's just me. Because humor is the way of teaching you things. It helps us learn things about ourselves as humans. It helps teach us things about our world space. But one of the biggest things is, if there's one thing dictators don't have, is humor. So in my mind, it's actually it's a protest against the idea of dictatorship, is that you can sit there seriously and command armies and command a country and oppress a people, but I can still make fun of you.
That's like
humor.
that's the contrast, right? That's like the
Yeah, but that's the truth.
that's what makes
That
it
is
funny,
my
I think.
version. Exactly, but it also makes it poignant
Yeah.
because he can't do anything. He was alive when we did that, and he can't do anything about it.
Saddam Hussein.
Humorous.
Oh,
No, Saddam was dead. I think
Mugabe.
Saddam had passed already. Mugabe was alive.
Mugabe was alive, yeah. Yeah.
But I'm saying he could do nothing to me or anybody that was involved with that commercial. Humor. It is the first thing that people squash. So yes, I know it's an ad for chicken, but it was my opportunity to say, there is actually a power greater than your dictatorship. And that's the sense of humor of people to laugh at you. Because the last thing, I promise you right now, Colonel Gaddafi ever wanted was to be laughed at.
To be laughed at, yeah.
So it was a powerful statement. For a lot of people, it was a catharsis. It was a way of actually feeling a sense of those terrible people could actually be made fun of.
Yeah.
So, we all have our reasons for doing things. And you can all like pare it down to it's about chicken. But for me, it was about making fun of some really bad men.
And it got you a lot of awards, no? The ad,
Yes.
like all over the world.
So the ad
the
got-
Cannes Lion and
Lions, and you win. Yeah, so we won a bunch of awards from it for the creative thinking and for the attention it garnered. I mean, I've won more awards from other commercials I've made. It did win me a lot of things, but what it did more than anything was it got me attention. So there's going to be a
to you,
different-
towards you, like from agency
towards me.
clients and
Exactly.
I don't know.
And subsequently, I've made probably about 10 commercials for Nando's. But the truth is, there's going to be a point in your career where there are a few things that you're going to want beyond the commercial, because some commercials are pure brilliance in their thinking, and the execution is secondary. It doesn't fall into anything that's vitally important. So what happens is the director doesn't get noticed. That often happens. There's been many campaigns where you go, my God, that is brilliant. And the creatives go on to win awards and get big jobs overseas or climb a ladder. But in this particular commercial, people could recognize the execution.
okay.
And as a director, you're looking for that. You want to show your hand. And the same for diversity.
Yeah, let's speak about that. Another one that got banned as well, right?
Yeah. So,
a lot of backfire.
Dictator didn't get banned as quickly as diversity. Diversity was in hours.
But it went viral online, right? It went viral.
Yeah, and that was an award winner locally. So understand that in South Africa, that was a big award winner. But it is a very local problem. And again, you got to understand, and I don't know in your intro if you covered this, but diversity was a reaction to the xenophobic attacks that have happened in our country.
Let's talk about it a bit, yeah.
Diversity is a very specific targeted commercial. It was very specifically by, again, Ahmed and that company to say, we are going to attack this thought that foreigners and outsiders aren't welcome. And that every country is born of outsiders, basically. And we used satire again to do it. And some controversial satire at that. But the reason I jumped at that and why I liked it the most is that, to me, there is nothing more egregious against the people than a xenophobic attack. There's nothing worse than that. Even, again, if we talk about the disgusting ideas of genocide, but to attack or try and remove someone in this world because they're not you or they're an outsider, well, we've got to find outsiders. We've got to define that relevantly. And we had the xenophobic attack, which was so gross and disgusting. And in my mind, a country that's a melting pot like South Africa, or even Africa as a whole, with migrating tribes, influxes from overseas, all the sorts of things, every world today. And then you had this egregious countrywide attack on foreigners in our country. So yeah, the diversity was a direct result of, do you really think that you're that South African? Really? Well, let's analyze it. And that's what it
Yeah.
was. It was a direct attack. So again, as a person who believes in the freedom of anybody to do whatever they want freely, provided it does not harm another person, I don't agree, have any grievance against any human being coming into a country, no matter what their creed, ethnicity, or race, and trying to make a life. And to me, when I read diversity, which was very close to my heart as a topic, more so than the dictatorship, because I've never lived under dictatorship, but diversity was directly affected me. And I thought, well, this is my way of saying, screw you guys. And diversity was very controversial. And it was banned immediately. It was people really, but it is still, if you go into any list of Nando's commercials, it's number one.
Yeah, no, it's really
the number one.
In terms of the country, like in South Africa, I think it's really had like a massive impact, and it's just
massive impact.
Yeah, just the creativity.
Internationally, that's where you look at you can get into a long discussion about what works for a country versus the rest of the world. Now, a dictator traveled, as we'd say, it traveled. Diversity is not on my reel because not many people overseas relate to it. They don't understand. But locally, that is the one that most people
really
go to. It's probably one of my most popular commercials locally. And I stand by that ad over all things. I love it. And I love the way we made it. And I love the bravery of the agency that made it and the bravery of the Nando's. So it's still, I enjoy watching that. I haven't watched it in a while, but it's that to me is a good commercial.
That's a great commercial.
It was good. And the sales went through the roof, which is also great. I like it when they tell me sales go through the roof. Dictator and diversity sales went through the roof. Whereas I've made commercials for Nando's where we did something and the sales didn't go so well because people were upset.
People were offended. But
they were offended. Was an ad? It starred a chicken, and I was told, never put a chicken in an ad for chicken. So,
the chicken was the main character of the.
Yeah, the chicken was the main character, and it was a Nando's chicken. So obviously, and in the end,
and that made people very angry.
It for some reason made the vegans angry. Like,
I
mean, really, guys, everybody must just relax. The chicken wasn't harmed. Eventually, I'm sure he was harmed, but it's like, I eat chicken. I can't, I'm not going to apologize for that. It was an ad.
Because I actually have another question. Because I think now, do you think it's still possible to make ads like this, that are so controversial, especially now where people, like you said, right? People are so easily offended, and there's this whole cancel culture happening. And recently with the Gillette ads that sort of went crazy. I don't know if you saw that ad that went crazy.
Yeah, of course. I have a different take on the Gillette ad, but to answer your question, it's a good question. I don't know if it can be done. It's a good question. And I've never thought, because I've always rallied against this concept. And I know many comedians around the world often bring up this idea of, I can't be the comedian I want to be because cancel culture. And I never saw myself as part of that resistance, but I don't know if you can do it anymore. And that's a tragedy.
Yeah.
That really isn't a good thing. Because, the one thing that diversity did is a lot of people started talking. And that was the thing, is that, yes, you might have got upset by it, but it's the conversation happened. With diversity, with dictator, not so much. It wasn't really a conversation starter, but it was funny. But diversity and a lot of the stuff I've made, I've always believed in going after things that make you do in some way, reflect or think, because I'm a filmmaker by trade, and I like to engage my audience. And that usually requires a little bit of thinking. I don't know if you could essentially change the way people think from a commercial, but you can start a conversation from film or commercials and
Yeah.
to put brackets on that by canceling, being afraid of canceling. I'm not really concerned about being canceled. People can try that shit. I mean, I think it's so stupid. I think it's so
Yeah.
self-righteous. And I promise you now, you will make mistakes in your life. And we've all made mistakes.
Yeah.
But can you make dictator these days? Don't know. You're right. I don't know.
Because the Nando's ads now, and they're not as risky as like,
No. There's no doubt that we got pulled back. And I recently made a commercial for Nando's that got a bit of that. Let's put it this way. That we made a commercial for Nando's called Mzansi Poli, which was really a play on the board game. It had a lot to do with the state capture issues within the country, and the sort of government at the time, previous government, I should say. And we were pared back aggressively out of fear. We never went full hard.
So like from the brief, from the script, you started like sort of removing
They
things.
pared it back. And I think that those were mistakes that were made, personally. But I remember we did a joke. If anybody's ever seen the ad, it's basically a family playing Monopoly. And the father, we made this ridiculous family too. I mean, there was an Indian son and a black daughter and a white son and a white wife and a black father. And it was all supposed to be ridiculous. And they're playing, and obviously the black father goes to jail and he says, and he pulls out the race card and everybody laughs and it's hysterical, which is a play on people pulling out the race card when they feel threatened. And everybody panicked. The country is going to lose their mind. Everybody's going to complain. They're going to cancel Nando's. They're going to cancel the ad.
So this was the agency and the client, right?
Everyone was petrified. They had people manning the phones, ready to take the phone calls on Monday. Let me tell you, that ad is now one of the most liked Nando's ads in history.
Oh.
So the fear was misguided, and the people that created the fear were misjudged their public. Of course, they're angry people online. Online is just filled with angry people. But you know what? Good. There needs to be a few angry people. Then there will be some happy people. You can't. Advertising makes its greatest mistakes when it tries to appeal to everybody. So take Gillette, for example. I'll tell you where Gillette went wrong, in my opinion. The ad is beautifully made. It's made by a woman, a very talented.
She's very talented. Kim Garrett.
Very talented director.
One of the best.
So it's one of the best in the world right now. There's all that in the mix. The biggest problem I've got personally, why I don't like Gillette, is I'm not interested in brands telling me how to live my life. I really am not. You can make fun of things, but I really don't believe that if you want to be a brand and signal that you are woke, you are sensitive, you know how to live, and you start telling me I'm not interested in your brand. It was the exact same thing as that Pepsi debacle.
Oh, yeah.
The minute you start to try and appeal to everybody and you tell me that you are virtuous and you know better, and I remember that you sell razors for a living, you're going to get pushback. People don't want to know how to live from a brand, in my opinion.
Yeah.
The brand advertising is there. There is this thing I believe, and this is personal. There's an unwritten contract that the world has made with advertising for the longest time, and we're starting to break that contract. The contract was, if you really are short, you're entertaining, or at least informative, I'll listen to your sales pitch.
Okay.
I'll listen to your car, that your car will make me look sexy to women. I will listen to how many price drops you've got on your latest Mother's Day cards. I will listen to you sell me chicken. If you can make it entertaining, fantastic. If you make it short, better. Because I want to watch my TV show and I want to watch my movie.
I want to see your ad.
And I know that you pay for that. That we do. There's only television. Just remember, movies are the things between adverts, not the other way around. No adverts until streaming. There was no TV. So we accepted this contract. Keep it short, make it funny, entertaining, make it emotional, and I'll listen to your sales pitch. And then I'm going to watch Will and Grace. But the minute we made it long, we made it virtuous, we started trying to teach you something, people started getting angry.
Like long, what do you mean by long? Long like the brand film?
Like it's long, 90 seconds.
90
With all due
seconds
respect,
and...
who the hell wants to watch 90 seconds of ad? I promise you, anybody listening to this, even as a filmmaker, I love making 90 seconds ads. That's where I get to be a filmmaker. And every now and again, someone makes an amazing 90 seconds that is so engaging, I'll watch. But you've got to be careful. This is my opinion, obviously. You've got to be careful. But then it better be good. Because an audience is saying, okay, I'm going to give you your time. I'm going to give you my attention. Don't abuse it. The minute an advertiser abuses your attention by making it boring, same as a movie. I don't know who said it. The most famous saying I've ever heard about films. I think maybe even Christopher Nolan said it. You can be confusing. Don't be boring.
It sounds like a Christopher Nolan thing.
Yeah, it is. Definitely confusing.
Confusing, yeah.
Don't be boring. And in 30 seconds, you better not be boring, because that's the worst thing you can do to someone is waste their time. So if you're 90 seconds, and I just made 90-second ad, so I've also indulged, but I think it was a nice one. People seem to watch it to the end. But don't forsake the contract. It's the same thing in movies. When we sit down to watch a film, we've given you we've made a contract and we've given you a bit of our time, our attention. We are far more forgiving in feature films because it's really a contract of engagement and pleasure versus, and you're not trying to sell me anything per se, but advertising is trying to sell. That's its goal. And I like doing that too, because if your sales go up, that's like achieving something. I don't know why people are so afraid of selling things with advertising. That's the goal.
That's the end goal.
That's the goal. So when you tell me, if I make Dictator and they tell me, Jesus, people love that ad. And then the Nando says, and we had the best December we've ever had in costs and profit, I go, job done. But for some reason, people are afraid of being part of some sort of free market capitalist society. I'm not.
I think selling is a bit. Sorry, I think it's a bit embarrassing in a way, because I think it's like selling in the street, right? You're selling stuff in the street. You have to like express yourself. You have to entertain. It's that thing that you said, right? You have to be short. You have to entertain. You have to show that it has value, and it's you have to put yourself out there so people get a bit like. That's what I think.
I want that.
Yeah.
No, you're right. So I'll tell you where advertising comes from. This is what you are. This is your job as a director in advertising. Hundreds of years, thousands of years ago, when the first marketplaces began, and people would take their wares to the marketplace. You take your bananas, you take your goats, you take your fruits, you take your labor, and you'd go and you'd stand there. And everybody in the beginning stood quietly. And people would walk around and buy the fish, the fruit. And then all of a sudden, someone had a cousin who was a loudmouth. And the cousin arrived and he stood there at his cousin's stand and went, watermelons, watermelons, watermelons here. And he sold the most watermelons. And they went, that dude was the first advertiser. And then someone else had some watermelons at the same market. And his cousin stood up and went, best watermelons in town. And the other guy in that corner was going, my watermelons are the best in town. And we started brands. That's advertising.
Yeah,
You're just a guy screaming in the marketplace.
for
I promise
attention.
you now. Yeah, for attention. And the guy that got the most watermelons sold had the most entertaining brother or cousin.
It wasn't even about the product.
No. Obviously, you've got to make good on your
Yes, so the
product.
product
You
as
can't
well,
sell rotten watermelon. But what we do is scream in the marketplace.
Yeah.
So think about yourself that way. You want to make people laugh. You want to make people cry. You want to sell them the watermelon.
Yeah.
If you're not doing that, you're just a dude screaming.
No, but it's a tough analogy, but it's true.
The truth.
It's the
I've
truth.
got no problem with it.
Yeah.
Like I'm not upset by it as an idea.
Yeah. So when it doesn't go right, it's just you screaming.
Yeah. It's
And
just you
people are
screaming.
looking.
Why do you want that?
Yeah. Okay. So now I wanna just rewind a little bit,
Sure.
and go a little bit back in time, and just because like we said, like advertising is very mystical and very, it's so I usually would like to know, like, how did you get into like commercial directing? How was your start as getting into commercials?
So my whole journey into film was a very long, convoluted one, but it started with me working on film sets when I was very young. I happened to have a friend who was a next door neighbor of a crewing agent, and we got to work on film sets as young guys on our holidays. And it was great pocket money and it was great fun. The film industry is for anybody who doesn't want a 9-to-5 regular job that is the same all the time. It's a great job because different locations, different people, different experiences. And that's what's amazing. So I started running as a runner, basically a gopher on set. And I worked my way up until I actually wanted to be an actor, realized I wasn't a very good actor, and then wanted to work as closely with actors as possible. And that turned out to be directing. So I worked in film crews until I was finished varsity, and then I went to film school. After film school, I tried to get a feature film made, and it was just, at the time, really difficult. There wasn't much money in features, and I needed a job. And so a production company in advertising, which I knew nothing about, was looking for a researcher. And that research department was the best film school ever, because what you're doing there is you're working for other directors, helping them create their pitch documents to pitch on jobs for advertising. And through that, for 7 years, I learned everything there was to know about advertising.
Okay.
And I fell for it a little bit. I had a marketing background from varsity, and I just enjoyed the process. So for me, it just became a natural evolution of an entirely long relationship with film. I'm going back to film now. I'm going to be making my first film soon. But
Oh, nice.
advertising has just been a journey. And then when it went well, which it did for me, I've been very blessed and lucky, because it doesn't go well for everybody. I just managed to indulge that and work in that industry regularly for a very long time. But it is certainly for younger men and younger women and younger, I guess these days, anybody really. I think that the market has opened up quite beautifully for all essentially types of people. It was obviously at one stage, depending on your country, but it was very much a boys' club. So at first, you had the opening up and the idea of really empowering women to direct commercials, which has, I think, grown incredibly. Obviously, within our country, people of color have grown into positions of great power and shown incredible skill and talent. Nurturing that has been one of the great joys of being in the country, and the reason why I've always lived there, being part of a renaissance of what is essentially African storytelling, which was essentially suppressed. That's a legacy that I think before I retire, that's the one thing I want to see blossom. And it's a world that can be incredibly kind to you, but I won't say it can also be incredibly cruel. I won't not say that, because you are in a competitive environment and it doesn't work out for everybody. But there's a lot more to the film industry than directing, which I think is very important.
Yeah.
The art department is one of the greatest places in the world to work, which is where I worked mainly before I became a director. There's the camera departments, there's the gripping departments, there's the production departments. There's so many positions available on a film set for your skill set that directing should be the last thing you think about doing, in my opinion. Consider everything else first, because directing is the place where you will find the most attention, but also the most responsibility. You will find yourself in really amazing moods, and you will find yourself in very dark places as a director. Whereas my film school lecturer always used to say, you probably know this, you know those moods. I know them very well too, after being in this business for 25 years. My film school lecturer always used to say, director is the one artist who can't actually touch the canvas. He's always standing back and looking at it. Acting, art direction, cinematography, those people all touch the picture. They physically touch it. They light, they dress, they act, they speak, they produce, they put wardrobe on. Whereas you stand back and you watch the whole thing happen, you don't touch. And sometimes people just want, as I always say, they want the chair. My opinion is, if you want a director's chair, buy a chair and print director on the back.
So become a director.
Become a director is different. It's responsibility, it's passion. It's going to be a horrible world if you do it for the chair. The chair, the privilege does not outweigh the work required. And it will reward you if you put your effort in. Like all things in film. Film's about what you put into it in every department. It's not a place to coast, but it will reward you with an incredible life.
Oh, that's true. That's true. And then I also wanted to know, could you guide us on like sort of the life of a director, right? Like a commercials director, right? What does the director usually do, like on a like?
All right, so that's another good question, and it's important to know. So a director in commercials is probably going to find himself on set less than he does other things. Understand that a commercial, if you're very lucky, you're shooting multiple days, but most of the time it's 1 or 2, and that's happening only a few times a year. Most of your time is spent pitching for work competitively against other directors to advertising agencies. In that pitch process, you're going to be creating documents which we call treatments, visual treatments, which are your Bible for an execution of the brief given by the agency. Most people will spend 90% of their directing career doing treatments, 10% making ads. Most people don't, unfortunately, have the privilege of winning jobs hand over fist, I should say. It's a situation where most of the time your hit rates are 40, let's say 50-50. And if you're 50-50, you're doing well. Not everybody is 50-50. But if you don't enjoy the process of actually creating a pitch document, which is all about thinking and referencing and considering the best way to create this commercial for these people, it's going to be a very difficult job. Yeah. A pitch document, to give you a basic idea of, will be a visual and audio-visual presentation that explains to an agency and to a client that when they give you a script that says, we see multiple dictators having fun together, but we know that one is still, this is a historical idea of essentially a past lives montage, and you then sit back and go, okay, are they going to be comedians? Are they going to be children? Are they going to be perfect representations of the actual dictators? What's the camera work going to look like? How should it feel? What's a good reference to show the agency that explains how that's going to look? What are the color palette choices? What are the acting choices? Is it going to be over the top? Is it going to be very subtle? What should the music be? What should the framing be? All those questions get answered in a presentation. And you present that against 3 other directors, and the agency goes, we like Dean's opinion, or Ariel's opinion the most, and we're going to give him the job. But you can go through long batches where you just don't win those jobs.
Just constantly pitching and pitching.
And it's happened. After I won Grand Prix for diversity or dictate, I can't remember which one it was. I think it was diversity won Grand Prix.
In Cannes Lion. Not Lion.
No, at
Lurie's.
At Lurie's.
Lurie's, okay. Yeah.
I didn't work for about 7 months.
After you won the biggest award.
Yeah, I just couldn't get my pitches to work. Maybe I got cocky. It just was a bit of a run. You got into a run where it just couldn't quite land a pitch. It also happened to be that I'd grown a level and I was pitching against tougher guys. So now I'm pitching against some bigger boys and some bigger girls, and I was losing. And I just won a Grand Prix. So it's a process, but I promise you, it's something you got to enjoy, because you don't just get to direct. Directing is a career whereby you do multiple other things, which is writing treatments, researching. And I love doing a treatment. I really do. And I love presenting it too. Yeah. You've got to love presenting those ideas to an agency.
Yeah. That is going to be you started off as a researcher, no?
Yes, I started off as someone who helped directors do that. But not only that, I enjoy presentations. I enjoy that process. And it's important because you will be doing that to people all the time. You're going to go through 8 or 9 meetings before you set foot on a film set, always having to present. And that's important. So as a director, I always say the most important thing to love is the process of directing. And the process of directing commercials is very meeting heavy. In other words, lots of meetings to share your ideas with your clients and agencies who have to give you the go-ahead. They have to agree with you, and presenting your ideas to win the job in the first place. That is most of your work. So this year, for example, I took off for paternity leave. I had another child, but I've pitched 3 jobs and only shot 1. So at the moment, I'm 1 in 3. I've spent most of my year pitching, not shooting. That's just the case. Last year, we only worked from August to January, and I never lost a pitch. I made 8 commercials.
Wow.
It was just a good run.
Yeah. So you never know, really. Huh?
My very good friend, another director you mentioned, Mark Sadelsky, always said, it all goes in cycles. It's a marathon, not a race. Yeah. Well, it's not a 100-meter dash. And that's the truth. Your career is what you've got to look for a career. Don't look for the job or a job. Look for the career. You'll be fine. It's if you try and get the job, the big one, and that's all it's about, all about beating other people, it's going to make you miserable, man. Really.
That's true. That's true. And there's also the process of presenting the work after it's done, right? To like the client.
Yeah. Then you got to present it, and then they got to like it.
They have to like, and if they don't like it,
look, it's only happened to me once.
no.
I've had one commercial in my entire life not flighted.
Or they canned it. Okay.
Where the client said, I don't like this, and didn't let them flight it. And he was not involved. He only came on in the very end. So it wasn't like the clients along the way didn't like it. It was this other big CEO walked in and went, I don't like this. And they always look at the director, and he was like, what are you going to do about it? And I said, I didn't write it.
Or they looked at you.
Like, I didn't write it, but they look at the director.
Wow.
It just so happened that 3 months later it won a Lurie. But at the time, they wouldn't flight it, and they never flighted those ads.
Oh.
And that was short-sighted. They were very nice, actually. But and it won a Lurie. That campaign won Luries. So at the end of the day, you never know, but it's never happened to me, but it does happen to people where clients go, you didn't deliver, and they pull that ad and they sue the company.
Or they sue the company.
And it's the director's fault. They're going to blame the director.
The company's going to blame you, like the executive producer.
Everyone will blame you. You will always be the person they blame.
Yeah. I think people should know that people who want to become like directors, and you think it's glamorous, like you said, just sitting on the chair.
It's that chair is a big arrow
for people to play.
Be careful.
Yeah, and then in terms of like we spoke about a bit of the creative side. In terms of the financial side, right? How does it how does it work? Like at what part of the process you get paid, and like how much in average in SA, right? How much in average do you guys like make and stuff?
So I know that. So financially, it's important to talk about. It's important because you want to make money in this career. Otherwise, it becomes very difficult. It all depends on your deal, and you've got to be very careful as a young director with regards to your deals. You've got to realize that most commercials directors work in a very particular way, which is a shoot day fee. And a shoot day fee worldwide, on average, can be as little as $2,000 a day to $60,000 a day. But if you're only shooting twice a year, you've got to put it in perspective. On the whole, it all depends really on how you work your deal. So Africa is unique in that we actually do a profit share model, which often directors do, which is not only do you get a smaller shoot day fee. In South Africa, the average shoot day fee is now between 15 and 30,000 rand. I don't know how that would translate.
I think it's about
that is your
in
average.
Dollars. How much in dollars? Because we usually use dollars, so I think it's
okay.
about,
so if we're looking at the dollar rate, so
maybe let me check it. Let me
international, like I said, an international dollar rate for a middleweight director is about $8,000 per day.
Okay.
So that average South African director, it's about $1,200 a day. But your average South African director is also getting a profit share on the markup that is made. But margins have shrunk over the last couple of years because budgets are tight.
Yeah, but it's $2,000 just to even 30,000 rand. It's around $2,000. So it's that range that you did say. Yeah.
I would say that's so that's a shoot day fee if you're not getting profit share. So you'd have to be shooting quite a lot to make a substantial amount of money. But it all depends because it's such a big tier from people that make so much more and people that make so much less. But if you look at, for example, a DOP who will work 10 days a month, his shoot day fee is $1,000 a day.
Yeah.
So he's working, they're making a very consistent amount of money.
They don't have to pitch as well.
They don't have to pitch. They just have to be good at their job and get people like them.
Yeah. So yeah. And then what about like the treatment process? Do directors get paid during the treatment process? Like if you have those situations
That
where
is on risk.
those situations
On
where you're
risk.
just pitching. Okay, okay.
So that's why pitches cost time and cost a little bit of money, which is why where production companies come in.
Okay.
But it's all on risk, and that's important.
Okay, okay. But they do hire like researchers, people to help the
Yeah,
directors.
some, if they can afford it.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's important for people to know to know the risks. It can be
Some
glamorous.
people can't afford,
but-
some people cannot afford to hire researchers, so they're doing it themselves.
The director does his
And
own
that is
treatment.
costing
Right?
you time.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
that's why I believe every director in commercials should do a stint in the research department, helping other directors.
Mm.
That's important
Yeah, yeah.
because it gives you an idea. It teaches you how to write a treatment, because writing a treatment and pitching a treatment is a skill set on its own. And you can be brilliant. And I've met brilliant directors, way more brilliant than I am, who can't be in the room. They can't pitch. They stutter. They get nervous. They clamor up. You can't get your job that way. And no one's going to go, but he's brilliant. He just can't pitch.
And you just don't win the job, even if you're like,
You just don't win the job. He's great, but I think he's quite brilliant, but I don't understand what he's talking about. We had a few directors like that, and they don't work anymore. You have to learn to pitch, and you have to learn to write a treatment. It's vital.
okay, cool. So you've done so many award-winning ads, right? But what would you say stood out from the work you were like awarded, or the work that like you're sort of proud of, or that performed well? What you think stood out from those ads, and in the process of choosing the jobs that you do, right? Should you be picky, or should you just do as much as you can and hope that it wins you awards?
It's a good question, but it's difficult to answer. It's not as much difficult, maybe even then it might be a long answer. So things have changed dramatically in the industry since when I first started. There's more people in it. Awards shows have grown exponentially. There's multiple award shows. And I would say that if we break that question into two parts. So yeah, I've had commercials I've made that I've been a part of. Just remember, I'm still part of a team that makes commercials, from the advertising agencies right through to the clients and myself and my team that have won awards, and hopefully continue to do that. But I find personally, maybe it's my filmmaking DNA, that I prefer the work that I think audiences like. And that is like all awards, is that they often don't meet. What is an award winner often isn't necessarily a crowd pleaser. Now, I'm not really interested in all like total crowd pleasers, because there's many types of ads that we just know will please anybody that watches them. But if you take a piece like diversity, I'm very proud of a job like that, because I see an opportunity to execute, to challenge, to entertain, to teach, teaching is not the right word, but to educate and engage, as well as potentially sell some chicken and win an award, all three. It's like a trifecta. But I pick, so what happens is I very rarely these days have had the privilege of turning down work. It's rare, but I guess that if I'm choosing work, it's usually work I believe I can contribute to and interests me. It's a difficult thing, because you see, when you're building a career, you're not only building a career based on the work you do, you're building a career based on the relationships you make. So a lot of really good work that I've done, that I've won awards for or have been really successful, let's call it that, are on the back of the relationship I built of work I necessarily didn't like. The work I did with Ben Kingsley for Santam was on the back of work I wasn't really that interested in, but I was young and I was building my career and my relationships, and I wanted to work with that particular agency. So I did the work I wasn't that interested in doing.
Another epic ad, the Ben Kingsley ad.
Yeah. But
Amazing,
then
amazing.
subsequently, a very famous director I worked alongside turned that work down and therefore didn't get to pitch on the Ben Kingsley stuff.
Or
So
turn down the work that you did
that
that
I
you didn't
did.
like.
Yet that I didn't like. He turned it down. He said it was terrible. And I was like, yeah, I didn't like it either. But I wanted the relationship. So you making decisions, the famous insider saying is for dough, for show, or bro. In other words, you do it for the money, which we all need to do it sometimes, for the show reel, because it's a good piece of work, or the relationship, a brother in the industry that will be there to give you work. I still work with some of the same people I've started working with 15 years ago. Those three things are important. And sometimes you're lucky, you get all three. It's a good job. There's money to be made, and there is a relationship to be built. But that's rare. Usually you have to pick. And that becomes important in terms of how you lead your career. That's why I said, don't go for the job, think about your career. And I've always thought about my career, hence I've been working for a very long time and continue to work. So it's an important aspect. And one should always look at the job, the job is not only in its now phase. The job is also going to be something you carry with you in your future. So if it's a good job, it carries with you positively, like the jobs we're talking about. I still get asked about them. I've gotten work off them. A bad job will drag with you like a weight. You don't realize that those things can have impact upon you too. So you have to make your decisions not only based on the job at the time. You have a career to consider. And you should hopefully have some people, some mentors in your life, which I've been lucky enough to have, that help you through those things. I've made mistakes. I'm not perfect. No one is. And you have to learn to manage those things. The failure of expectation. Some people sometimes give you a job and you do the best job you possibly can, but no one likes it. No one gives you an award for it. It doesn't inspire sales. The agency doesn't have anybody pat them on the back. Meanwhile, you love the job. And it doesn't get you anything. Happens. You know, I did a campaign years ago that I loved. I thought it was just brilliant, this concept. And it involved replacing these heads with these hands, where I don't know for everybody, but in South Africa, if someone is talking rubbish, you go yada, yada, yada. They just don't stop talking. So we replaced these heads, and there were these men and women that walked around with these hands, it was called yada, yada, ching, ching. And it didn't do very well as a campaign. It somehow it creeped people out. It really just bothered people that there were human beings with heads for hands. And I just always thought that was cool.
Sorry, but and I actually have a question. When do you usually get these results? Is it from the agency? Is it from the client? Or is it just general?
Over time.
Oh, okay.
You know, months later, you find out, you're plugged in and you realize, and you don't get an award, you don't get talked about. You know when things are going well.
You'll know.
If you're plugged in, you know when things are going well and when things aren't, you know? Like when we did the Mzansi Poli stuff, we had just the most incredible response I've ever had to an ad. The most incredible social media response I've ever had to a commercial. And the same for the client. The rest of the industry didn't even give it. It didn't win a single award, didn't even get a right. It just got ignored.
Yeah.
You
No,
know
but
why?
no, but I think you guys actually did win a lorry, didn't you? I think you won a lorry.
Not from Zanzipoli.
Or was it nominated? I'm not sure. Okay.
No.
Yeah.
Was it nominated?
I think it was.
Nothing.
I think we have to I'll fact check.
You can fact check me, but I mean,
Yeah.
genuinely speaking, you got like it's
Yeah,
got
well, it
nothing.
didn't. Mm,
You know, and that was a huge success for that client. Huge.
mm,
So it's all very dependent. So the thing about the yada yada, so we had all this like it was nowhere. And then one day on an international rugby field, a rugby player used the gesture directly from the ad to tell off a coach, because the coach was talking to him and he went, and you realized that you'd infiltrated the culture.
mm,
And that's way more fun for me. I like that. I will always look for something where I can infiltrate the culture. For years, when we were doing Toyota commercials with this particular dog, we had eventually gotten to a point where people were quoting. If you can get someone to quote your ad, that's a huge win. That's better than an award for me. If you
mm.
can infiltrate the culture, that's huge. Huge. That's so much bigger than an award. So I like that. If I recognize that in a commercial, I'm there. An opportunity for me to infiltrate the culture, do what I do, what I like doing, which is working with actors, telling story, conceptually strong work. I'm not interested only in visual work. I find that boring. I think there are too many people can just do pretty pictures with no concept behind it. It's easy.
Mm.
Some do it better than others, but I personally am not interested in it. I don't particularly like shooting inanimate objects like cars and food. I pick based on what I like doing, but beggars can't be choosers. And when you start your career, you take what you can get. And you must always just find the best advice I can always give is look for something that you like. Look for a piece that you can indulge in, that you can enjoy. Because even if it's something that you don't necessarily want to do, there must be some part of it you like. Whether it's even the treatment, whether it's working with a particular actor, whether it's shooting in a location you've never shot in, whether it's using a piece of equipment you've never shot with, find something, buy in, go in head first.
Okay,
you know?
okay. That's good. That's good. And then now let's explore a bit now like you said, I think earlier, your international side of your career, right?
Okay.
Which is hard for quite a few people. South Africans are lucky in that aspect because a lot of them get to work internationally. So now we're gonna show
Not many. No, not many.
not many.
Very rare.
Or is it rare?
It's very rare. It's very rare for most directors.
To
It's
work
sad, just
internationally.
to clarify, working internationally to break borders that way
Yeah.
is actually very rare. It's not common anywhere.
Oh, okay. No. That's true. Okay, it is rare. I did think it's an exception for South Africa. But now we're just gonna watch one of your international ads for a huge brand. for the Virgin Media one.
Oh shit! Yeah.
With
Okay.
Elvis.
Okay. Wow. Yeah, okay. From
Yeah.
UK.
Yeah. That was like a huge ad. I'm gonna play it now.
They say fools rush in, baby. So let's be fools. Cut the commitment. And you can get a no-strings 30-day marriage at the Virgin Media Chapel. All you gotta do is get it on.
The age of promiscuity is here, so set your entertainment free. Long live Virgin Media's no-strings 30-day TV and broadband contracts.
Yeah.
That's just like
show with
wild.
Elvis.
Well, yeah.
That looked like a really fun job.
That the costume design was the most fun part of that. So, for example, like conceptually speaking, the best fun we had some amazing actors, actually, funny enough, there, some really incredible people. And it was just an opportunity to play around with stereotypes and, well, not the stereotypes, but from film. Because in a perfect world, you'd actually want like real lookalikes, but we didn't really have that kind of budget. So it was just playing around with the concepts, Vikings, Game of Thronesy type people, a Maryland's type. Elvis was the only sort of very recognizable idea. It took place in Vegas. It was a dodgy wedding where basically entertainment was getting married to entertainment. It was sort of supposed to be sexy and promiscuous, and it was just fun. It was just quite a fun spot.
Yeah, it's a really cool concept, and like, a lot of stuff we sort of grew up on, like Marilyn, almost call it Marilyn Manson, Marilyn Monroe, and like Elvis, and a lot of like, and I think, and I wanted to know from you, how was it? How was the experience? Okay, let's first speak on this ad, right? How was the experience working on this ad, and like, what difference was it like from because this was shot in England, right, or was it shot in SA?
In England. I shot that that is actually the same church as one of the big films shot in that church. It's why I liked it. Kingsman shot in that church for America. It was the scene where they turned the sort of killing ray on in that a Pentecostal church. It was the exact same one. So I wanted to shoot there. So,
you're like watching the movie as remembering
it was
scenes
just
of the
cool
movie.
to be. If you watch the movie, you'll see it's the same church. But the experience is, look, it's not the first time I'd shot in England. It's probably my third or fourth by that stage. And it's a really great team that I work with. My rep in England's an amazing team. It was a difficult shoot, a lot to do in a single day. An amazing DOP, they're amazing crews, and you're just working like anywhere, but the experience is essentially the same, just with sometimes better people or more access, better budget, less budget. It's all the same. It's just more money, or it's more skills, or it's more talent, or it's less. I shot in parts of the world where I've shot in America where I had a crew I really didn't like. They weren't talented at all. They were terrible.
Really?
So you get bad, you get good. And that particular experience was a lot of fun because it was just this incredible group of people. But the shoot itself, I'll be completely honest, was a nightmare. It was really hard to do. It should have been 2 days. We only had one. We went way over schedule. I got dragged out of there kicking and screaming because I hadn't finished shooting my storyboard. The shots we had planned, some of them didn't work. The stunt coordinator, we had a walkout because one of the actors was just so sick and tired of being in a he was in a space suit for 9 hours, and eventually was like, I'm leaving, I can't take this anymore, I'm out of here. He walked out.
Is that legal?
Yeah, it is. Sure. We went over schedule. It is, right?
Oh, like overtime. You guys went, okay.
Yeah, we went to overtime. It was just just didn't flow. It was one of those days, man, where it was just difficult to shoot.
Yeah, you had a lot of extras.
But also there was, it was a toughie. It was just one of those, it wasn't one of my favorite experiences from a shooting point of view. The pre-production process was the best ever. It was so much fun dressing those guys. Location scouting, it was awesome. Churches are amazing places to scout. But the shoot itself was a really difficult one and not a lot of fun. I did not. And then, it was just tough. So, there's good and bad parts to everything, It was just one of those shoots that was really hard. It wasn't what I would call the best shooting experience, but it was overall an amazing one. And I've always loved working in England. I love the kinds of crew. They're my kind of people. They're quiet and get on with their work.
Americans
I like that sort of, It depends where. Again, it depends where, it depends
who's
who.
the crew, yeah.
But the nature of the British crews is very professional.
Okay.
And I love that. The German crews are the same. The German crews are unbelievable. I find them just so focused and quiet. Whereas, yes, I've worked with American crews that are noisy as hell and just they're professional, but they're big. Everything's big. And I find the same here. I find African crews quite unruly and wild. But that is also what makes the work here so unique. There is a certain looseness to the African sensibility. The rules set that is there is freeing. You don't get to do the kind of work you get to do here, like anywhere in the world. The work you do here, you won't get to do it anywhere else, and you won't get to do it in that time, in that quality with the money we have. We are incredibly resilient and resourceful, and it's an amazing continent to grow up as a filmmaker on. One of the few wild places left in film. We don't have the unions. We don't have the strict laws. I've shot in Australia where I was telling people we were doing this like little stunt with a kid on our last job. And there's nowhere else in the world you'd be allowed to do that without a stunt crew. It wasn't in putting this child in harm. It's just that they would turn it into a thing. And it would waste your day. I was shot in Australia. We had to drop a piano out of a building. And they made us stand across the street. And you're like...
A stand for what?
No, stand. You
guys. Oh, so it didn't hurt anyone.
Yeah, here I'd be...
Just do it.
a couple meters away. Not that that's a good thing. It's not a good thing. But it also would... The drama they created around this thing.
Yeah, it limits your creativity, it limits
it limits your time on your day. You can't shoot as much. There are things you get out of working here that you don't get anywhere else in the world. And that's amazing. But then you have other things where God forbid, you lose the life of an actor, like happened last year.
During a film shoot, a commercial shoot.
Yeah, give and take. But no one should ever be hurt for a shoot. But I'm just saying there is advantages to being in a space that is emerging. And Africa's emerging. Always has been. And there's advantages in being a place like England where everything's so rigid. But there are also counterbalances.
Advantages. Okay.
Sure.
That's true. And I think it's just important to maybe I'll just explain to the listeners who might not understand. South Africa basically, because I think you've done other international jobs, right? But in South Africa before you travel. Before you travel to do international jobs like outside South Africa. Just to explain to people, South Africa is basically a hub where everyone goes shoot there because the exchange rate. Is it Cape Town, huh?
So specifically more often than not, Johannesburg has what we call a service industry. So every country, two types of industries in the commercial world and in the film world too, but let's talk commercially. And that is the essentially local market and what's called service. Service, the local market is like what most people do, which works doing the local market advertising and content pieces. Then there's the service work, which is basically an industry built on servicing international work inside your country. Cape Town is used a lot for that because it offers so many locations in a very short space of time or travel. That's why. It has very experienced crews and it has great locations. You've got beaches, you've got desert, you've got wine farms, you've got mountains, you've got city, you've got homes, you've got suburbs, you've got townships, favelas, whatever you want to call it.
Is the desert in Cape Town as well?
Yep.
Wow.
The dunes, the Atlantis dunes are 40 minutes away. So the fact that you can travel within a day, which makes a huge difference. Travel is important. It's the big cost. The fact that you can travel to multiple locations within one day in one city is huge, and Cape Town offers that. Therefore, a lot of international people come and do their shoots in Cape Town. And for that, you require what's called a service company. That's a company who facilitates the making of commercials in another country for another country, which means you finding foreign actors, finding locations and redressing. I've shot, for example, the last international commercial I did was for Colgate Palmolive. It flighted in 7 countries. I had to make sure, international countries all over Europe, I had to make sure that those jobs reflected an international look. They couldn't look like Cape Town. You're replacing street signs. You are cutting away South Africanism. You are casting people that look foreign. There are some foreign actors who then work in Cape Town. You're doing all those sorts of things. Then I've shot for Belgium. I shot a car chase in Cape Town for Belgium. I had to change all the street signs. I had to repaint the lines. I had to shoot on the other side of the road.
But how hard is it to like execute all that, like to make
money?
It's all a money. In fact, with money it can be solved.
Can be solved. Changing street signs. It's just money. That's when that stuff comes. I mean, you got to be smart, and there are people who are better at it than others. I use a particular art director, Naomi Naoset, who's just particularly good at altering. But Cape Town is very good at doing that because they know they've been doing it for the last 30 years.
Oh, yeah.
So they know where to shoot a little bit of France, a little bit of Italy, a little bit of Belgium, a little bit of New York. New York used to be shot in Joburg, but that's changed.
Oh, yeah.
Johannesburg used to double for New York quite a lot, but it doesn't anymore. So that is why you get the service industry. And sometimes, not all the time, they don't bring a director. They hire locally.
A local director.
And that's where I will come in, or a local director will come in.
Oh, okay. So the difference with these jobs in terms of like you as a director, right? In terms financially, it's just they pay better. They pay you better. It's bigger budgets. Or it's the same.
No, not necessarily. It all depends. Each job is different. The Colgate job, bigger budget than I'm used to. The first job I did, very small budget. It all depends. The only reason I'd say is they pay well is they pay in dollars and they pay outright. So there's no markup. In other words, I get a larger shoot day fee.
Okay.
Then rely on the profit sharing system of my local jobs.
Oh, they don't use the profit share system that they use in SA and stuff. Okay.
No, if you're doing that international loan out type stuff, it's usually called a loan out when I work for internationals.
Yeah.
That is an outright pay, but it's not necessarily better. It all depends on the job. Like I say, dough, show, bro. Doesn't always mean that you get all of it.
Yeah. No, because I think people sort of have this misconception because it's international, it's going to pay you a lot of money, and because it's in the US or it's in the UK or...
No, not necessarily. Not necessarily. Some yes, some not. Depends on the job. On the whole, if they're bringing you out, you see, the thing is, you got to look at it this way. When you're getting brought, if I go and shoot overseas, I'm not going as a South African. It's because I have a rep in America or in England or in Germany or in Australia that is bringing out a director on their roster. I'm essentially an Australian director or English director. I'm represented locally in that country. They don't bring out South Africans. They bring out people they represent, even if we all happen to be living in South Africa.
Okay.
So when I work as a loan out director in Cape Town, that's different. There I'm being loaned out by my local company to a particular production company that's using my services.
Oh, okay. And how tough is it like to get a rep, like an international rep, like to get to that level?
Difficult.
Where okay.
It is. It's difficult, it's plain and simple. It's difficult, however, it's not impossible, and it all comes down to the work, and it takes a bit of time. It took me about 4 or 5 years of working steadily. And then after that, it's become part of my routine.
Okay. True. And then actually I have another question. And what would you say was the toughest time for you as a director? Like your toughest moment?
On a shoot or as a director?
As a director, like in terms of your career, like you felt like
so the toughest. There have been three tough things, and these will be the same for every single director, except for a handful of very lucky people. And even then, starting is incredibly hard. Not the first job, because usually the first job's quite easy. It comes quite quickly. If it's good, it's an easier in. But starting out gets hard because you want to transition from being new to working. That was the hardest part. You're usually not making a lot of money. You're working incredibly hard. You're doing a lot of favors, and you're getting very little reward. And often it's not associated with awards or money. You're just building relationships. And it seems pointless. It's hard, really hard. Then the next phase, which was even harder, is the transition from being new and working to a working director, earning a living and actually having a life. Because to make that transition is really tough. And it's dark because you're getting very seriously judged. And
by who? Like the agencies and the clients.
That transition is where most people fail. That is where most people fail to grow into, and where they end up going out of the industry. The transition from someone who is new and can be easily sold into a working director that is consistent, earning a living, that transition for directors is the hardest. It's where we lose most of our names in that space. And then recently, the third hardest for me as a director has been transitioning into not so young anymore, and not necessarily being the first person people come to because there's someone young and exciting who they'd rather work with. Because it is an industry where you transition through these phases of being quite big. And I mean, you can see it even across the world. My heroes of hero directors, I mean, no one even knows who they are. And these were the biggest directors in the world. And now I honestly don't think you see any work they do, because there's other cooler, hotter, younger directors. So we go through our phases, and transitioning into the phase of steady hands, older director, maybe not the coolest anymore. Industry's moved on from you. That's been hard. Took me a little while to get over not being called for everything and not winning as many awards. And, you know, that process becomes harder to get work. And that's just the evolution of things. You know, all things have their cycles.
Right.
But I found other things that are more important. As you get older, you realize that you have families and kids and things change. But the transition phases are the hardest part as a director to deal with, because in each one of those transitions, you will question yourself. People will question whether you're worth it, and you will think you're never going to transition comfortably. But then you do. You just put your head down, you do your job, and you do. Those are the three hardest things I went through. That, and then on the side, I once messed up a job. And that was hard to deal with. I messed up a job. I made mistakes.
People weren't
And-
happy, and you felt your career was going to end.
Yeah. And you feel like your career is going to end. And guess what? That was 15 years ago. Career didn't end. So
Still
I've come
alive
to
and
learn
kicking.
that was not the hardest thing. The hardest thing was emotionally dealing with the transitions,
Mm,
because you need to be happy and you need to be comfortable with the world you're in and the phase you're in your career. That's
okay.
what's hard.
Okay. No, that's good. Great advice. Great advice. So final words. Is there any advice
Yes.
you want to give to, like, young upcoming directors who want to maybe get into the commercial industry? Or is
So
it
my
just
first
that?
piece of advice,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I've given you lots of
A lot,
I mean,
yeah,
I've given so
lots.
much advice, and I don't know if any of it counts because I'm just one person with the opinions. So it's not
Yeah.
gospel. But what I would say is, don't be in a hurry. Don't be in a hurry. You need to be consistently good. It's important. So don't be in a hurry to be good if you're not ready to be good.
Mm.
Don't take it too seriously. Seriously, it's important. Don't take it too
Don't take it too
seriously. Your life will not be over
Right.
when
Yeah.
things go wrong.
If you mess up a job.
Try not to, but your life will not be over.
Yeah.
From a directing standpoint, always be learning. You are never fully formed. The reason someone once asked Martin Scorsese, why is he still great? Why is he the only one of his generation still great, still making great films? It's because he's still curious, he's still learning.
Yeah.
He's 77.
Yeah, it's very old.
Always be learning, always be willing to listen. It's not your idea, it's someone else's. And try everything else before you try directing. Those would be a
The
couple
other
of my-
departments. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
try the other departments first. Yeah,
Okay,
that would
cool.
be those would be my main ones.
Okay, cool. Thank you so much, Dean. Thank you
It's a
so much
pleasure.
for your time. Thank you
Thank
so.
you. It's very kind of you to ask my opinion. It's
Yeah,
just
no,
my opinion.
I think
Very
I've been
kind of
wanting.
you to ask.
I've been wanting to do this interview in my head for years, but
Cool.
I finally had the platform now to
Cool.
to
Well, I hope it
just get into your line of thinking. And I hope that, like, because a lot of things we have spoken about before, like me and you.
Yeah.
But I hope other people who also want to get into the industry can
Yeah.
listen and learn, and hopefully you've inspired other people to
Yeah.
get into the industry. It's tough, but there's nothing that's good is easy, right? People say that.
No. It should be. It should be.
Yeah.
I would say the last thing I would say on that is also, if you succeed one day, help
Mhm.
others.
Yeah.
Don't hoard the knowledge.
Your knowledge to yourself.
That's what's, yeah. Because yes, you are creating your own competition, but don't help others. This business needs more legs up than it needs to be pushed people down.
Yeah.
You will be benefited by a bigger industry,
Yeah.
especially a well-educated one.
Mm. Yeah, I think people sometimes don't see that. They don't see that, like, I think one guy once said that, what's his name? I think Jerry Bruckheimer, producer, he said that, he's happy when other people make good movies because more people want to make movies. Like, so it's better when people make even
Awesome.
better commercials because there's more demand for commercials. Because especially like your era, when you were doing the Nando's ad, like South Africa was going crazy with commercials, like because people watched a lot of TV and the work was just great. So it was an honor to have you on our podcast,
Pleasure
and
to be here.
Now I'm just gonna switch it back to Portuguese just to end off
Sure.
the show.
And obviously, if you ever want to do a Q&A, if you get a bunch of questions and you want to do a Q&A afterwards, or we haven't answered anything, I would be honored to come back.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think definitely there'll be some people who will have. I think because you've sort of demystified the area. The area is quite mysterious to people. Most people, like,
Yes, it is.
directing, they want to do movies. They don't want to do commercials. But I think the more things we do, the more it will demystify and the more people want to join the industry. So, yeah. So, então, esperamos que gostaram deste episódio. Foi em inglês, como falamos. Foi um mega trabalho traduzir isso tudo. Foi um mega trabalho. Foi mais longo do que esperámos o podcast. Foi praticamente traduzindo um filme inteiro. Mas o Dean Blumberg é uma pessoa muito, muito especial, um convidado que como viram o trabalho dele, já trabalhou por volta do mundo inteiro, Inglaterra, Alemanha, Estados Unidos, e não é fácil, então, e também não é fácil termos convidados como esse no programa, então esperamos que gostaram. Sigam próximos episódios que vamos lançar. Só para fazer lembrar também, estamos à procura de patrocínio ainda, aquela mesma informação de sempre, tem o IBAN embaixo, tem o PayPal para apoio internacional, se puder nos ajudar para pagar a equipa, porque ainda não temos patrocínio, estamos a fazer isso de nossa vontade própria e partilhar o conhecimento e para ajudar a pagar a equipa e motivar as pessoas. Então, esperamos que gostaram e vamos ver até a próxima. Até já.